ED 591, Final Project. The final project for ED 591 involves the creation of a 5-year budget and a comprehensive advancement plan. The project is broken into 3 distinct parts. Part 1, Budget Narrative. The first section of the final project asks you to write a narrative about the rationale for your 5-year financial budget. The plan must establish the rationale for your budget. You are also required to show how your budget and the budget process point to your adherence to the PSEL standard number 9. Now, the plan must include the following: your school's mission statement, the budget assumptions, budget process including the timetable, individuals involved in the budget process, the use of data in the budget process. That means student data as well as demographic data, sources of revenue, the rationale for your tuition rate, and potential increases, salary increases, and your compensation philosophy. The compensation philosophy does not need to be a full page. It can be one, possibly as short as 2 paragraphs. Enrollment projections. What are you basing your enrollment projections on? You simply cannot say, my enrollment for this year will be 500 and the next year will be 500, unless you have some rationale for that, based upon, again, the use of data. Staffing projections. What are your projected staffing needs? Do you see any increases or potential decreases in faculty or staff projections? Are you planning any capital improvements? Buildings, roof, new computer labs, new boilers, new parking lot, new cafeteria, new kitchen, any of those types of things. Also, any new educational programs that you think you might be starting in the next few years. You must also include the use of technology for administrative and operational planning as well as daily operations. What will you use to implement your plan from an administration? What software do you use? For operations, are you using QuickBooks? Are you using Blackboard or some other software to ensure that the data that you have collected is adequately maintained and utilized? The method for communicating with faculty, staff, and parents regarding the financial operations of the school. How do you communicate the tuition increases? Do you send out an email? Do you have a mailing to all of the parents? How do you communicate to the faculty and staff regarding tuition increases, faculty salary increases, and the financial status of the school? How are you ensuring that your school is complying with local, state, and federal regulations for the sound management of the school's resources? Monitoring and evaluation of the school's resources and programs. How do you determine whether your budget is successful? How will you evaluate the effectiveness of your budget? That's part 1. Part 2 is actually the 5-year budget. In this section, you can either use an elementary school or a high school, whichever you feel more comfortable with. You can use a make-believe Catholic elementary school of 500 students, Or you can create a Catholic high school with a student population of 1,000. Now, in some cases, you might want to use your own school's budget. That is perfectly acceptable. If you decide that you would like to use your own school and create a budget for them, that is perfectly acceptable. Now, in terms of what does that budget look like, this is what you will find. You will be given spreadsheets. Now, on these spreadsheets, in this particular case, it's an elementary school. You're going to be asked for your tuition and all of these different things. Here you see the account numbers. This number here is the category, and this is, as you can see, total tuition and fees. Now, what you'll notice here are numbers like this. You'll see a 0. That means that it refers to one of these spreadsheets down in the bottom. Now, for instance, what you'll be asked to do, if you click baptisms, what are the baptisms in your parish for 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15? Then you'll say the enrollment. What are you projecting your enrollment to be? What do you project your enrollment to be for these particular grades? Again, current and then projecting out. This number here will automatically, average class size, it will automatically be determined when you look at this number here. You'll put in the total number of classes. So let's say you have, I'll just use, you're doing 30 students in this grade, 30 students in this grade. I'm going to put only 14 in this one. I'm going to put 19 in that one. I'm going to put 21 here. I'm going to put 31 here. I'm going to put 17 there. And for 8th grade, I'm going to put 25. Now, I'm going to say total number of classes. Well, in this particular case, I'm only going to have one. If I'm only going to have one, that means I would put in the number 8. And then you'll see here, this number is your average class size is 23.3. Now, perhaps you're going to say, because I have 30 here and 30 here, I'm going to reduce that or increase, and I'm going to have, instead of 8, I'm going to have 10. Again, you'll see that number changes. So, when you get to tuition projections, let's say I'm going to put $2,000 here. I'm going to put $2,500. Excuse me there. $2,000. Here I'm going to put $2,500. Now, when I do that and I go back to my first sheet, what will you notice? You'll notice that my tuition is automatically included there. And this number here averages everything in this column right above it. So you'll see, again, any place that you have these zeros, that means it corresponds to one of these sheets below. Now, again, you'll see all of these particular areas that you must determine how much will be raised if you're having a yearbook. Now, maybe you're not going to have a yearbook, and you say, no, we're not going to do that. All you have to do is simply put a 0 there. But if there's a graduation fee, let's say there's a $15 fee, put that down. Okay? Now, you'll see all of this subtotals out to the revenue. Now, when you get to administration, or to expenses, you'll see administrative salaries. Again, you'll see these sheets down the bottom. If I push salary projections. What I'm going to do here is simply list. You must list which staff positions do you have. Receptionist, principal's assistant, attendance clerk. If you have a librarian, if you have paraprofessionals, they all go here. So when you put those down, okay, you're going to say, I have one here, I'm going to have one here, I'm going to have one here. And what do you notice? Down here, it'll tell you staff salaries, staff salaries. That means that, that would only be 3. Now, the reality is, it's not the number. I want their salary. So if this is $2,500, $25,000, and this one is $21,000, and this person gets $19,000, what you'll see is the salaries of $65,000 for those people. And let's say I add a librarian in there, and the librarian, she's a little bit more expensive. So, excuse me, that should be $35,000. Okay, now your staff salaries are $100,000. Now, if I go back to my 5-year budget spreadsheet, what do you notice? You'll see that the $100,000 for salaries is included there. Now, what you'll also see on this salary projection is you are asked to, again, give me your best estimate. Now, you know FICA is 6.5% of this amount. Of the total salaries, 6.5% is FICA. And then you can estimate what will your school be spending for these individuals on medical insurance, dental insurance, retirement, life insurance. This takes some decisions on your part, which again, you should have spelled out in your narrative, saying that we will continue to put as a part of our compensation philosophy, 4% of the salaries the school will donate to retirement. So again, you'll see that same thing for teacher salaries. Now here, you're going to put kindergarten teacher 1. If you have 2, kindergarten teacher 2, put their salaries down there. And again, project what that will be next year. If you say that this is what they're making this year, then simply you want to add 2% for next year, fine. But you must do that for all of those, and then you'll see that. You'll see administrative salaries. List down what administrators do you have? Principal, assistant principal. Maybe you have 2 assistant principals. Maybe you have a disciplinarian, whatever it would be. Capital improvements, there's another sheet here. Major technology expenses. Okay? Now, again, you'll go back to your 5-year budget, and again, you can scroll down and you will see all of the categories that you must put into those. Now, what you're going to do is you'll see some of these. It references the numbers, the subtotals, the major categories. And this will tell you whether you have a surplus or deficit. If you have a deficit, that is a problem. If you have a deficit, that is a problem. You should not have a deficit unless you are finding some way to pay for it, and you must include that in your narrative, that maybe you have an endowment that you're using to offset your really high expenses that particular year. Now, if you're going to do the high school, and let me enlarge this just a little, you'll do the exact same thing. You'll see tuition. Again, remember down here, you will see enrollment projections, all of these. Okay, now one of the things I will tell you is that on the screen, you will, for instance, only see up to technology information technology. Push this little button right here and you'll see there are more categories. Again, these spreadsheets down here relate to the larger one up here. Okay? Now, let's go back to this budget here. That's part 2, the part that we just talked about with the spreadsheets. Those will be online in Canvas. Now, the third part, Comprehensive institutional advancement plans. In this section, you are to create a 5-year plan for your institutional advancement efforts. Your plan must include a statement of purpose for your annual fund and any major gift or capital campaign. That means you have to write a case statement. That should be one, no more than 2 paragraphs. Planning process. Spell out your planning process. Again, who's involved in that? When will you start? What's the timetable? Statement of your goals. What are you trying to do in terms of raising money and participation? Don't just simply go on the financial. Also look at, are you going to try to increase your participation every year? So if this year I want to get 25% of my parents and alumni donating, next year I want to get 28%. Spell that out. A timetable for events and mailings. What events are you going to have? Are there events that you're going to have? If you're going to use a phone-a-thon, if you're going to use a mailing, if you're going to have an auction as a part of it, spell that out. Anticipated cost statements. What are you estimating it's going to cost you to raise the money that you want? Be sure that the numbers match what you've put in your budget sheet, in the spreadsheet. Staffing needs to accomplish your goals. Who's responsible and involved for each goal you set up? Selection process for personal solicitations. How will you determine? Be specific. Don't just say, I'll ask Father. I'll ask the pastor. Not good enough. You're going to have to, again, that's where the data comes in. Methods of evaluating your effectiveness. How will you evaluate the effectiveness of your advancement efforts? So again, 3 parts to your final project. As you go through, I would strongly suggest that you look at the spreadsheets before you start. Again, all the material that you're asked to do has been covered in the course of this semester. So none of this should be new to you. If you do have any questions or concerns, I would encourage you to send me an email or feel free to give me a call and I will work with you to make sure that we clarify any points of confusion. The idea of this project is to pull together all of the parts of the course from this semester, setting up a budget, and then dealing with the fundraising part, the advancement part that we've been talking about over the last several weeks. I would also strongly encourage you to start looking at the project and planning this within the next week. Waiting to the final week of the semester will probably make this an incredibly difficult and time-consuming and perhaps frustrating final project. So that's why I'm giving you this project and this explanation well before the final project is due. Again, do not hesitate to call me or send me an email if you have any questions or confusion about the final project. Thank you.